Today we have with us 4 of the artists who are in the exhibition. They are Xinyu Dai, Liz Hayes, Stephanie Kudubamba, and Taylor Rebel. The artists will speak about their work, and there will be a short Q&A at the end of each artist's talk. After all the talks, we'll have lunch in the cafe area. We have some chairs here that I've seen already taking the seats in, and we'll also move around the galleries as we move between the artist talks as well. So for our first artist, we have Xinyu Dai. Xinyu Dai is a graphic designer who's currently pursuing an MFA in graphic design at the University of Houston. She received her BA from the University of California, San Diego, where she double majored in speculative design and linguistics. Her practice is rooted in graphic design and it extends across posters, books, publications, and visual systems, while exploring how design can move beyond the two-dimensional into spatial and material forms. Alongside graphic design, she works with wood carving, incorporating it as both a material and structural elements. By bringing texture, resistance, and traces of handwork into graphic systems, she investigates how material processes can expand the language of design and shape how images and narratives are experienced. She approaches design as a way of thinking and researching, not just as a tool for communication. Typography, layout, and image sequencing, material choices form the core of her practice, often informed by research into visual culture and cross-cultural contexts. Her work develops through an iterative process of making and testing, with a focus on how material, structure, and repetition shape visual systems. Xinyu will also be participating in a group exhibition, Invisibility, on May 8th at the Elgin Street Studio Gallery 1. Xinyu.
First of all, I want to thank you, all my committees for help and all the lovely people for putting everything up. So this work called Nightmare Emulate, and it began with a very simple question. What if nightmares are not something to eliminate, but something that we can stay with? I will start a little bit about myself first. I grew up in China, where symbolic practice were part of everyday life. For example, seeing telescope writing on paper, or seeing people using protective objects at home. So at that time, I didn't really fully understand them, but they shaped how I look at images. It's not as something to look at or to decorate, but that's something that can carry intention or carry meanings. And later on, when I start to experiment in recruiting nightmares, I start to think about the connection between these two, the intention of dreams and also the symbol that can hold and redirect the energies. So this work comes from that kind of intersections. So rather than trying to remove nightmares, I began to think about it as something that already exists in a kind of instability. So it's like, so nightmares kind of like, they appear, disturb us, and then disappear. They really don't leave a clear structures, and we don't really have the space to process them. So in this way, I'm trying to kind of I'm not trying to remove nightmares, but I'm trying to kind of create a field that allows every instability to coexist in the same place. So as a graphic designer, I'm always interested in how meaning is built through systems, repetitions, and relationships. So if you look at every single element, so each emulates, each of them, they represent a whole single nightmares. And when you see them individually, they show how chaotic and how complicated a nightmare can be. But when they come together, they form a field that allow all multiple nightmares and all the viewers to coexist in the one environment. So the ideas come from both Taoism and psychology. And the Taoist tradition understands symbol through movement and breath as a way of aligning body and form. From a psychological perspective, treat nightmares as something, as expressions of internal tensions and also unsolved emotions. So even though they are different systems, but they both see fears as something, carry tensions with motions. It's not like just random things. So I'm trying to kind of using that two thing as a framework to kind of form a structures. And also, when you look at the emulate, there's a lot of like orange elements on it. Especially the orange element, they come from my own dream archive, and they are directly from the concrete image of the nightmares. Rather than illustrating them directly, I try to translate their movement into structure forms. For example, if you see the downward movement, this is the downward movement over here. It means the falling body, and also there's like a broken voice that has the gesture of erasures. So they all translate into movement forms. And I also use two blues, one dark blue and one light blue, according to the orange. They also shows the flows and emphasize the flows, and also and also shows the continuous in the environment. So they both kind of forming a movement. The blue one and the orange one, but they're kind of like a different movement. So instead of forming a simple contrast, I'm trying to let these two different kinds of movement that can flow and they can exist in the same place. So each emulate is built through carving and stamping. It's kind of like repeating the action of pressing and lifting. So this action become a kind of like a rhythm, almost like breathing. So the process is kind of like a cycle of pressure and release. So where each marks follow a physical rhythm, and that allows each emulate, like each nightmares, to leave a trace. So the stems are carved through black locust wood, which is dense and resistance. It carries tensions, and it requires a lot of pressure and control on it. So and also the paper is a washi paper. It's light and can move with ears. So they kind of forming a contrast that a solid piece pushing a very unstable place. So the installation is structured through layers, the outer layers and the inner layers, and the whole structure is designed slightly to move. When you kind of like walk around it, and you can feel they kind of like moving with me. So it allowed the structure to continually shift in its relation to its environment. So the instability is not something to resolve, but it's kind of like the condition of the work to exist within. Instead of creating a single meaning, I let this work remains open, and I inviting all the viewers to enter these conditions and moving between the instability and uncertainty. So this work is not about just removing fear, but about giving it a form so they can exist differently. And instead of fixing a nightmare, I'm trying to create a feel that we can stay with the nightmare and we can give it a breath. Thank you.
Thank you, Xinyu.
Thank you.
And so now brings us to the Q&A section that the artists have. To start out, I do have a question for you. And thank you for sharing with us your process. I really enjoyed kind of learning about how you're talking about there is the contrast in materiality between the wood and the paper, and also the acts of carving and stamping. And I think these all connect really well together. And I wanted to ask more about this role of process in your work, which you already kind of talked about, but that in showing us these stamps and paper on this desk, you're showing us this process of your work to the viewers too. So I'm wondering about the importance of that.
So the process is very important because I want to create kind of like instability between me and the nightmares, or invite the viewer to enter the nightmare. So the process is about like I'm kind of trying to put the concrete imagery for my nightmare into the block, and let the block have the power to push it on the nightmare, to push it to form a field. So it's kind of like energy forming and the translation of energy to the field. So yes.
Yeah. so much. Do we have any questions from the audience?
I do. I wondered the type of wood that you chose. Was there a specific reason as to why you chose this?
Yes, yes. So the black locust wood is very specially. They carry density, they carry resistance. They are hard to carve. So it's just like that you're facing like a very hard block, and you're trying to put the energy in it, and so it's kind of like the wood is it's kind of like a representation of the energy form. Yes, I have the answer.
Thank you.
Yes.
I wonder, could you talk more about the like significance of kind of engaging with this like Chinese tradition and bringing it like here in America, or if you kind of are thinking about that, or like, I guess more about kind of like the role of tradition in like a culture that's very much like a mix of different cultures.
Yeah, it's kind of like Taoist practice in even contemporary and cross-cultural contexts.
Yes, I'm very interested in that because, so first I'm a graphic design student. I'm trying to kind of see all kind of different cultures and kind of merge everything in a good way. But so for this work, I'm kind of trying to bring up Taoism and psychology. So this is all because they are kind of a system that really treat nightmares as something different, not something like not something like random. So that's why, and also I'm from China. So the Taoism symbol is kind of like in my heart, and that shows. And a Taoism symbol also have the power to ward off evil, or to ward off like the thing that is bad. So that's why it's kind of like merging the cultures, not really like merging the culture, but like merging like the two systems into like to forming a new structures that can show like they can exist in a different way.
Thanks.
Now I see repeats of symbols, so how many symbols are there, and do they each have meaning?
Every symbol has meaning. So especially the orange one, they directly come from the concrete image from the nightmare. But the blue one, they're all kind of inspired by Taoism. And the steps are over here. Like there's a lot of different elements of it. But they all have like certain meanings and certain direction to direct the energy or the movement.
And how many stems did you end up having?
I have like 36, I think, yeah. I think so.
I have another question. So each stamp is representative of a different nightmare? Do you have repeat nightmares, or do you do like the same?
I'm not repeating the nightmare, so they are all different. It's kind of like when I'm stamping them, I'm kind of think about the nightmare, think about the chaos that happened inside. So it's just like forming. It's not like really random, but they kind of like can illustrate how my brain thoughts at that time. Like yes.
So it's like less of a record, but more of
Yes.
a reflection and
Yes,
remembering.
yes.
Yes.
I had a question. Did you have a particular arrangement that you felt like more connected to, or like a specific stamp that you felt was like kind of the strongest, or like just you had a deeper connection to versus the others?
Yeah. So for me, the first orange element stand out is the eye. It's the one with the eye. That is really like impressive, and that happens a lot. So that's kind of like a lot of like personal thing on that kind of symbol.
So I've seen a little bit of your work in the past, and you've used colors that are on the opposite ends of the color wheel, and I see we've done it again with the blues and the orange. Is there a significance that you have to choosing those colors?
Yes, they are. So the orange one, I kind of conclude that come from psychology, and the blue one, all the blue ones, the dark blue and the light blue, they kind of inspired by Taoism. So they kind of like both form a movement instead of like a simple contrast. But I wanted to kind of use the orange element to kind of like stand out from the chaotic of the nightmare and the complicated of the nightmare. So it's just like when you see the blues flow, and you can also see the orange flows, but and they kind of like reminds you that this is a field about that thing.
Thank you